Hello, listeners. Not So Giant Women is back with Daria and Ivy. Today's episode to watch and discuss is episode 23, Monster Buddies. So, what in the world is going to happen this time?
I know it sounds a very 1980s local monster craze cash in that title. I'm like imagining a buddy cop with like the Frankenstein monster and Dracula and a werewolf all teaming up to do stuff.
I'd watch that. Should we get it started and find out what kind of monster we're buddying with?
Yeah, here we go.
All right. We
are the crystal gems. We'll always save the day. Oh, wait!
What a sweetie.
Oh, I think that's what we call bittersweet.
Yeah. Time to tell us about the episode, yes?
Right. We join our heroes mid-mission in an ice cave of sorts. They're after something called the Shooting Star. The ice cave is very unstable. Things keep falling on people. Amethyst she's not entirely okay with it, but she only objects so strongly to a bunch of slabs of ice falling on her. They conclude, however, it's too dangerous for Stephen, and Garnet decides to send him back to the temple, which she does by bubbling him. She does the bubble trick they normally do to the gems of creatures and monsters they fought, and he goes through a little wormhole emerges in his bubble back in, well, what looks like Garnet's room earlier, except now we are very much seeing a fire pit and many bubbled gems, including, as Stephen finds when he emerges from his own bubble, the centipedal from many episodes back. And he accidentally releases the gem from its own bubble. It first takes on the monstrous form we saw earlier, but then sort of shrinks back to a kind of centripup. And it, rather than attacking Stephen, appears scared and nervous, and he tries to calm it down successfully. The gems return. Pearl especially is alarmed that Stephen is near that thing. They're in favour of simply rebubbling it, presumably. But Stephen insists he can tame it, I guess. He's been successful so far. And Garnet agrees to let him try, at which point Amethyst very smugly tells Pearl that she has been put down by Garnet, overridden. I can't remember the exact term, but it was hilarious. Pearl none too happy about this. Amethyst going to be dining out on it for a while, I think. They take the centripup up to the beach, where at first it's chained to a rock, and it dissolves one of its chains with its acid shooting power. Stephen insists that the other gems and Lion, who's come along to see what's going on, are making it worried and nervous, and persuades them to watch from the house. Stephen tames the centripup by encouraging it that crisps are a good thing, and feeding it crisps, as he notes immediately after I thought it. He's not sure how it could eat with an eye in its mouth, but it manages somehow. When all this activity of crisps attracts the attention of a seagull, and it tries to raid the bag of crisps, the centripetal defends Stephen from the seagull, and when Stephen realizes this is what happens, he guesses he must be getting through to it. He brings it back to the house, where the gems are still wondering how they're going to get to the Shooting Star in the ice cavern. Pearl particularly is alarmed that the centripup is free and following Stephen around like another pet, because he's making a few strange pets and friends by this point, so they must at least partly be getting used to it. He has trained it to shoot its corrosive jet at, well, anything, including Amethyst's lunch, which she's not impressed about. And Garnet realizes that this might be what they need to make their way through the ice cave and all its various obstacles. Pearl is again appalled. She's again shut down. She is, as Amethyst puts it, garneted. Back to the cave, and through judicious use of kind words and crisps, Stephen guides the Centropup through the ice caves until they come to the chamber where the shooting star, something so powerful and hot it must be encased in ice, is waiting for them. When Pearl advises, let's get a bit of strange animation here because Pearl's character design, her head was not designed to be seen from underneath, and her nose is sort of struggling and where to be in her face. But anyway, animation angles aside, Pearl advises Garnet to use her gauntlets to pick up the shooting star as it is so terribly hot. Upon seeing the gauntlets, the Centropup stares at the star, Hulk hands for a bit, then starts freaking out and attacking the gems, the cave, anything. At which point Pearl proclaims that she knew all this was going to happen and it's time for some combat which disrupts the fragile environment around them. In the throes of all this, Stephen is trying to get everyone to calm down again, gem and gem creature alike, but it is not quite having the desired effect. When it looks like he may be getting through, he hugs the Centropup and calms it down. However, a stalactite breaks through the ceiling, falls towards Stephen, and the Centropup pushes Stephen out of the way and saves him itself, at which point is squashed to the ground. The light in its eye literally goes out and it poofs away to its gemstone. Stephen is, of course, distraught. At this, the other gems compliment him on following in his mother's footsteps. Rose Quartz had wanted to try to reach the gem creatures and tame or be friends with them, but had never quite managed. Stephen at least partly got through to this one, and maybe when he gets better grip on things, he will be more successful. And as he reaches to the gem from the Centropup, a bubble forms around it, and Pearl ecstatically notes that Stephen can bubble things, meaning his powers are evolving. The Centropup's gem bubbles back to the temple alongside a bubble containing its favorite snack food, and we go to credits.
Yeah.
Another episode in which they really weren't holding back on things.
Yeah.
We got Stephen basically losing his friend / pet on screen. He calls it his best friend, and Stephen appears to be making best friends out of wildlife rather generously. So.
Oh yeah, he's called Lion that, and now this centipedal that he just befriended today. I like that you call it a Centropup. That's so cute.
I think it just looks like the baby form of it.
Yeah, I don't know why. But it's nice to have the centipedal back from episode 1, because that's kind of a throwback at this point. It's as far back as we can go without going to the non-canon pilot. So kind of neat to make it feel like there are more threads being pulled from what we've already seen.
Yeah, and shows us a bit more about what bubbling is.
Mm-hmm.
Because for the most part, bubbling, whatever it is, has largely been just a way to clean up after the threat of the episode. Even if we kind of guess what was going on, it was just, oh, we're done with this monster. It disappeared its body and left its rock behind. And look, we bubble it away, and that's the end.
Yeah, I guess you're right, because we've seen inside of that room only one other time, and they really did not focus on that there's a bunch of bubbles in there. But they never act like, oh, we're collecting these, we're putting them somewhere. They never explicitly showed that. They just, tap the top of them and they disappear, and that's that.
Yeah, and obviously you being bubbled isn't a permanent state. Stephen releases, releasing himself is probably easy because he's actually awake and moving, unlike the others, but he just kind of bumps the centripetal bubble and it emerges.
Right. It seems like a rather fragile way to protect something like that, especially if it could, what if there was an earthquake and these bubbles hit something and all these monsters just suddenly started pouring out of the temple? I don't know.
Yeah, so they're probably kind of lucky that the one Stephen happened to land on was one that had a sort of domesticated, tame form and not one that just started burning and eating everything around it.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to really be too much of an explanation for that, although I guess it died in combat pretty recently. We saw that on screen, and that was its last memory, and then it comes back to its body and it's still scared. So maybe that's why it became diminutive or something. That's kind of my theory, is it felt as small as it ended up being.
Yeah, that definitely works. It was too traumatized to go back to its big form, and
Given
even
the
though
way that it was reacting to the weapons.
yeah,
That's how
and
I'm guessing.
even though it lashes out later, it's still kind of doing so out of fear.
Right. It seemed like a panic response. It didn't even really seem like it was actively attacking, even in the way that it did in episode 1. It was just spewing acid everywhere and kind of biting what seemed to have bitten it. So,
Yeah, and most importantly, shows that these things are still, well, at least some of them, or at least this one, is still alive and functional in there. Its gem didn't just sort of drop to the ground and lie there waiting to be rebubbled. So I guess a bit like people gems, they recharge when in gem mode.
yeah, seemed very much like with Pearl, except that they don't bubble Pearl away.
So I don't know, maybe it needs more recovery time, or bubbling sort of slows it down to an acceptable pace where it stays alive but dormant. But certainly addresses the question of, are these things dead after you bubble them? The answer is certainly no.
Right. And it seems they're pretty confident that they're not going to be able to get out of those things. So it seems like they must be inert and not be able to get their way out like the way Steven is. You know, he just pushed on it from the inside and came out of it. But, you know, the monsters that are contained that way, they don't have any body to do that with. So it seems like they're just kind of floating there. And I don't know, I wouldn't put that in my house if I wasn't fairly confident that they wouldn't get out. I don't know. It did seem like they were very fragile, though. So I don't know if this is a design flaw in their choices about how to store these creatures.
But they are storing them too. They're bubbling them, which again apparently keeps them alive. They're not just chucking them in the fire pit.
Yeah.
So either they are the gem version of the humanitarian society, or there is some reason to keep them around. Whether they've got a purpose later, or I don't know if maybe creatures like this can't actually be killed, and your best choice is to keep them dormant where you can keep an eye on them.
Right. There's some suggestion, I guess, given that Garnet was saying at the end that Rose Quartz tried to heal the monsters too. Kind of seemed like maybe this is the legacy of their former leader, that she wanted to help these creatures. And so it's not really clear how she thought she would do that, but it seems like they don't really have a solution, and this is what they're doing for now. And I think we'll just wait for Steven to figure it out.
Well, it seemed had Steven been more successful, obviously it would be better for all concerned. If the gem animals, monsters, creatures, however you want to think of them, could be sort of free without, well, burning the landscape, as is most of their modus operandi.
Right. What did you think when the Centipedal was starting to come back?
Well, I certainly recognized, and it's like, oh, this one again. In fact, literally, this mother again, because I still remember it being nicknamed the Mother Centipedal back in episode 1. In fact, Stephen does call it she at one point, even though we've been calling it all this time.
That's true. Yeah. They sometimes call them it, and other times, as in this one, Stephen was calling the monster she.
Yeah, so whether gem monsters have sexes or genders, or this is the same part of Stephen that adopts random mountain goats, I don't know.
And giant pink lions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, definitely if you use a pronoun other than it seems to make a creature something that you care about.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems to be like, oh, he let out that awful thing, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's very insistent terminology on Pearl's part.
Yeah.
I mean, even when we encounter dangerous creatures in our real world, we're not quite so vehement about describing it as she is.
Yeah, you're right.
So I don't know if Pearl is just particularly burned by this one, or she's definitely in the, well, at least until this episode, in the gem monsters can't be helped, put them back in the bubble and pop it into too hard basket.
Yeah. I did notice toward the beginning she was saying, if that thing hurts you, so help me, I'll, and gets cut off. So it seemed like she was just worried it was going to hurt Stephen, at least. But there was definitely a lot of sort of contempt to the way that she talked about the monster. So yeah,
I mean,
that is curious.
She was definitely worried for Stephen's safety, and quite reasonably too. I mean, we kind of know she's misguided because we're watching it from the outside, but she's
Right.
not entirely misguided. Last time they saw this thing, assuming she recognized it, it did try to kill them all, or at least it was rampaging in a way that would have killed them all.
Oh, absolutely.
So she's no particular need to be generous about it.
Right. It is interesting that everybody else in the show and everyone watching the show kind of thinks Pearl is wrong or is at least neutral on her perspective. Because in some stories, you'll have one person who's always naysaying everything and then they turn out to be right. So in this case, she wasn't, but you never know, I guess.
Well, she wasn't entirely wrong either.
It's true.
Because if Stephen hadn't managed to bring the Centropup quite back under his spell, and I just realized I don't know if that's a figure of speech or not, then it might have she might have just kept attacking them and might have reburied the shooting star, or might have actually injured the gems and or Stephen.
That is true. I have some questions after this episode about bubbling, because I mean that's definitely the first time they've used it to get Stephen out of a position like that, and it made me think anybody who can bubble can essentially teleport all of their team members as long as there's somebody to tap it. And I guess you just have one person that has to stay behind. So get the squishy organic boy out of there. But it's pretty handy that they kind of have this, you know, whether they'll use it for that is another question. But it seems like that would be handy to have a way to sort of teleport out of a situation.
Yeah, Pearl was alarmed about that, but we don't know if that was a serious worry or a Pearlism. Stephen did seem fine and not even actually particularly rattled. Right.
They do continue to act like the inside of the temple is very dangerous for him, especially that bubble room. So,
you know, I wondered if she was also having a bit of, you know, you can't bubble a people.
Yeah. Possible. Yeah. I could see that being used to, you know, get somebody on the outside. Like if everybody was imprisoned or everybody was stuck in an ice cave like that, you could send somebody out so that they could go get help. But, you know, if you're just going to send Stephen out, at least at that point, he wasn't able to bubble others anyway. And then he can't get back to them. I assume they got there by warp pad. So
yeah, that was my first thought when they said we've got to send Stephen home. I was like, I don't see a warp pad here. Is it just in the next room, or am I getting mixed up with another show of who has what powers?
I'm just kind of going to assume there had to be one fairly close, because I don't think those ice caverns are in Beach City.
No, well, it doesn't seem very beachy, does it?
It definitely seems mountainous.
Bubbling is apparently sort of an inbuilt power to gemness, as Stephen just kind of does it reactively, or
he picked it up.
Yeah, instinctively. He didn't have to be particularly taught how to do this.
Yeah, unlike with the shield, where he took a bunch of lessons and then he still had to figure out his own way to do it. So I guess they're all able to bubble things, and then according to Pearl, they can all shapeshift, and I guess they can get killed and come back.
And he's growing in, maybe not understanding per se, but certainly comprehending his having powers, as after he bubbles that. And Pearl, in fact, is more surprised than he is that he could do it.
Yeah, you're right.
So he didn't sort of go, oh my goodness, how did I do that? So
right.
He's aware he's growing into his powers.
Yeah. So he has another new one. Do you think he'll just run around bubbling everything from after this? They get home, he's like, bubble this, bubble that, bubble this.
Yeah,
his whole all his toys.
Yeah, he does a bunch of grocery shopping, sees that delivery is like an additional $10 and goes, I just bubble it all home.
And then he just has to risk going into that room. It seems they don't really have a choice about where to send it, or Garnet would have sent it someplace safer. So it has to go there. But it's still inside their house, you know? It's very close.
And obviously it doesn't have to be a gem or even a life form of any kind that gets bubbled, because apparently you can just bubble bags of crisps.
Put the chips.
Yeah, I kept having to resist just saying that out loud every time it was on screen.
Yeah, first appearance of chips.
But chips or crisps, depending on where you're from, obviously a favourite snack food with the Crooniverse, because we've seen a lot of them.
Yeah, we saw some other brands of them anyway. Definitely seen quite a few snackers. So, also the bubbling that they did, I was thinking about Steven and the different powers that he's had so far, and he can make that big bubble around himself and others also. And that seems like that's different.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about his self-bubbling ability.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the first differences we saw was to get out of the bubbling bubble, he just gently pries to depart.
Right.
His own bubble is usually near indestructible.
Not even a harpoon gun got through it.
Yeah. And in fact, as we saw, he just kind of landed on the centripetal bubble and it popped. So
Yep.
I think apart from the similarities of shape or, the God or evolution of gems just likes round things, I think these are just out to do with each other.
Yeah. This is a different function of bubbling. And those were both garnet bubbles, so probably as strong as they come.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if bubbles reflect their maker. Pearls are very geometrically pure, as spherical as they can be.
She bubbled that ice monster in this one. Looked like her bubble was sort of a pale white color, and Garnet's and Steven's are more pinky. It's hard to tell them apart.
Yeah. Anyone sort of not paying close attention could be forgiven for thinking bubbles are just kind of default pink by nature by this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. Pearl bubbled, I think, a couple other things. She had those gem shards in Fribo, and she finally was the one that bubbled the desert glass when Amethyst wouldn't do it. And there was another one, too. I think that she bubbled, Sirius Steven. She bubbled the gem that they took out of that pyramid. But it's usually Garnet.
Yeah, I guess this is part of her being up close and the closest thing they have to a leader.
I wonder if Pearl ever goes in there and starts counting them up and gets frustrated that she doesn't have as many.
Oh, she definitely does a tally.
I could see her doing it.
And there is a lot of why this or the other one doesn't count going on between her and Amethyst.
Yeah. No, I wonder how many of them are left over from Rose.
Yeah, good point.
But now we have two that are the same color as Roses, that as Centipedal and the Chaps. So, what do you think about the shooting star? That was interesting.
Yes, I can see how something so incredibly hot is a handy thing. And if Amethyst is to believe, you can shoot it at stuff.
Yeah, it was a really sort of an interesting way to make, so like the shooting star was their goal to get this for whatever reason, but we don't ever get to know why do they want it. It's totally focused on kind of Steven's perspective, where he wants to make friends with this monster and he wants to help the gems on their objective. But usually in a more traditional sort of quest, you would find out what it's for, or there would be more focus on why you want the shooting star. But it wasn't even the point. But Pearl was a big nerd about it.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen that something they do seems to be going and finding various gem artifacts and weapons and accessories and who knows what from around the place and gathering them up. So is this another mission like this, or does the shooting star have a specific function they're thinking of later? Is Amethyst's, well, you shoot it, meaning that they think maybe something particularly big might come up and this would be useful to shoot the star at it?
Yeah. I like when they do episodes like this because it just enhances the feeling that a lot of stuff is going on that Steven doesn't know about and he doesn't even think to ask. It makes the world feel bigger.
Yeah, because in other shows there might have been, the shooting star is the solution to the other problem, but no, it's just a MacGuffin they got to get this week.
Yeah. Although I do like that Steven he promised the centipedal at the end, even though it can't hear him, I'll heal you up someday. And that's sort of the first time Steven declared some kind of mission for himself. Like, I'm going to do this. And you can kind of expect that he will want to work toward that goal at some point in his life. It's like everything else has been him kind of following around, hoping to get included on missions and making friends, eating bits. But this seems like, I don't know if I would say it's like a turning point or anything, but it is kind of the first time that he has a personal goal declared out loud.
Yeah, over the past, 23 episodes, he's kind of been circling growing up further.
Yep.
I mean,
for its own sake.
Yeah, we've discussed sometimes on this show that he does seem to regress sometimes, but this is also something people do when they're growing up.
Absolutely.
But he's sort of bouncing back and forth between, oh, I've just seen a squirrel and I have to go and build it a fort or something. And, oh, I understand the gravitas of there are lives to be saved and worlds to be healed and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The footnote, the skeletal dead body just lying there in the ice caves, and they're just like, ew, and then just gets knocked to bits. And that's...
I was going to talk about that if you didn't. It seems like a very macabre kind of thing to be just lying around. And you've got this cute, jaunty music in the background. It's a background track that I believe is called Cave Spelunking or Monster Spelunking. That's the name of it. And they're just running through the dead miner, I guess. Just run through him, knock his bones around. It's great.
And they probably have a story of their own, but, well, I guess it doesn't end well.
Yeah. I also thought it was really funny that while they're going through all these cracks and stuff right at the end, when they get to that chamber where the shooting star is, Garnet is like seen squeezing through this crack. She can't quite get through all the way. She's like, but she doesn't make herself smaller. She just deals with it.
Yeah.
I love that. It's cute.
Another side thing I thought was cute was, even though Steven said everyone had their weapons out, Garnet and Pearl had their weapons out. Amethyst was doing the crane pose, which she probably got from watching Karate Kid.
Oh, like when they had the centipedal chained to the rock.
Yeah.
And he's like, put your weapons away. And that's when Pearl got garneted.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite lines. I really love their little family dynamic there where like Garnet says what's going to happen. Pearl questions whether that's appropriate. Garnet reprimands her and Amethyst laughs at her. Shut down by the G Squad.
That's the phrase. That's what I couldn't remember earlier.
So funny.
Well, Pearl's probably used to, but this is a maturity decision. That means I win.
Right, because we have seen Garnet side with Pearl many other times, so you never know. But whatever Garnet says goes. I love when she grants Steven permission to train the centipedal, and he runs up and hugs her around the leg. I think that's the first leg hug. It's just so cute. He's just so tiny compared to her, and he just hugs her around the knees. It's so cute. Can't deal with it.
And she gives a little small smile and is like, I can't say no to that face.
Yes. Yeah. Adorable.
Which
What
means
about,
she's probably onto something, because she's usually the most balanced. So I'd say she's like, this is at least kind of safe enough to let him try. We can always come in later with our gem weapons, which in fact happens. But she's willing to let Steven try to take that step, which fits in with his slowly actually starting to take 2 steps forward rather than a constant 2 steps back on his development.
Yeah, that's a good observation, because I think Garnet she usually seems to make very good decisions, and it seems like maybe she's weighing the pros and cons, like you were saying, with balancing the pros and cons of it. And she has started to observe that Steven does have a rapport with other people, creatures, whatever. And she figures there's probably a good chance that he will succeed and wants to give him that chance. I love it.
And so far, she seems to be the most invested in his further development. I would agree. It was she that gave her at least passive encouragement of his fusion potential early on.
Yes.
The first time we saw anyone fusing in Giant Woman, she was
That's right.
opening up the idea of his future powers and developing.
Yes. That's a good observation, too. She seems to be positive about the possibility that he will grow in ways that will make him more useful and more whole and more mature. I think you're right.
Yeah. And it's possible gems in general aren't used to people maturing at any kind of real pace. If they live for hundreds or thousands or whatevers of years, and especially if it's possible that they kind of just have a maturity level that they have as opposed to reaching it like humans do.
Mm-hmm.
So Pearl might Pearl might be, well, he's a child, I have to keep him safe because he's a child and that is his position. And Amethyst he's the one that gets the junk food in.
Yeah. She was so sad when her sandwich got destroyed. No, mi torta.
Torta, I couldn't remember what type of sandwich she said. It reminded me of the My Manwich from Futurama.
Wonder if that's a reference. Yeah, she thought it was hilarious that it was, the acid was destroying stuff until it was her sandwich. She recovered, though. And she probably could have just eaten it.
Speaking of, I love that the melting of Pearl's picture seems to scowl as it melts.
And Amethyst's like, that was awesome. A picture of Pearl got destroyed. That's great. Well,
what also makes you wonder, who's doing these repairs? Is Greg getting his gym building skills and adapting them to fixing the various pillars and holes in the wall when stuff like this happens?
That's, it's possible. Seems like somebody's got to fix it, considering there's pretty significant damage today.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's all fixed next time we see it. Or the town has like a single carpenter and they owe them a favor.
Yeah. Haven't seen that person as such.
It definitely seems to be a one of everything kind of town.
Yeah. I liked that when Steven was trying to train the centipedal out on the beach, the seagulls attacking was the impetus for this centipedal to show its loyalty. And it's funny to me because seagulls are evil, and even the monster knows that seagulls are evil.
Yeah.
They're the real monsters.
And when they're putting that scene together, they had obviously been trying to eat chips or crisps out on the beach, and seagulls are like, whoa, potato products, I'll have that.
You bet. Remember the chip times? You have to remember, this all happened today.
Yeah, there was a lot of spots in this episode where I kind of anticipated lines just before they were said. The eyeball thing and all those times, weren't they just earlier as today? Oh, right, I was going to say that.
Right. It was like a few hours ago.
And speaking of that last scene, we did get a nice variation of the Crystal Gems theme tinkling along behind, keeping the emotion, the nice bittersweetness of it all.
Yeah. And I like that they bring Steven's mom up at the end and, mention that she had that goal that she wanted to heal monsters too. Kind of.
It's very much been Rose's thing that she sees the potential and beauty in pretty much anything.
Yeah, it seems like there's some real compassion there, where they're kind of seeing her in his actions, which is kind of touching. So, but I have to say that it just makes me envision a big pink lady running around with all these monsters, like in her lap, like like bunnies.
I've been kind of thinking of a little flock of them in a crook like Bo Peep.
There you go.
Her dress would fit that. We haven't actually seen. We know very little of what Rose Quartz was actually like at this point. I mean, we've heard a lot about her, of her ideals, but to everyone so far, she's been kind of the lost Lenore, the figure who's mostly known as no longer being around. So we don't know how much is the sort of filtered through memory and grief and emotion and things. So we don't know what her actual sort of minute-to-minute personality was like and how she rubbed off against the other three.
Yeah. Oh, I will hold my thoughts on that. But not for too long. Well, trying to think of a good question for you, because I'm supposed to probe your mind with a probing question. What about if we were talking before about how Steven now has this promise that he wants to continue this same thing that his mother was doing, trying to heal the monsters as well, and he promises this to the centipedal who can't hear him. So usually there will be either someone will declare this kind of mission in a cartoon and then they will eventually fulfill it, or they won't be able to. So with your impression of this show, do you think he'll eventually be able to do something like that, or do you think it'll be more like he won't be able to, or he'll choose not to, and then I'll have to deal with that?
I could see it as being a kind of broader ongoing goal to try to best heal or make peaceful or whatever the various monsters they encounter. I mean, he was even alarmed at hurting the ice monster at the start. He's feeling, oh, your arm's off, or worse effect. So I can see it evolving into a general approach of bettering the creatures, the animals' lives, and making them less deadly to, well, everything. I don't know if there's like some finite amount. It seems like a goal like that doesn't have an end. Like the only end state I could think of is he fixes everything for every gem animal in existence, and that seems, well, I mean, there's obviously lots and lots of them out there. I don't know if that's, you know, any practical goal, like, you know, if you tried to save every animal on this planet in our world.
Yes.
It seems to me a kind of approach and ethic, if you will, something he will work at, but there is no particular end state. He doesn't have an Arrow-style list of all the things, the creatures he's got to visit and spiritually or physically heal. I mean, obviously there's only a finite number in the temple, but they're running into them every other week. And no one ever reacts like oh, it's that one. They kind of recognize them by type broadly, but they don't seem to react as if it's a specific singular creature.
Right.
So I think there's, from what I know at least, there would be too many animals, too many monsters to make it a final achievable goal, but it was certainly something you can do everything you can for while you can, which fits in with what Rose was doing. I would think she never saw her mission as finished, but saw it as accomplished every time she healed a monster, or would have if she'd healed a monster, or released the inner beauty of something, or made peace where there could have been conflict.
I guess at least Stephen promised this gem, so, but you would think that it would be more likely that he would at least marginally succeed with this goal, rather than, oh, this is an edgy show where he has to deal with not succeeding.
We've certainly seen that his approach is possible. He briefly made friends with the Centropup and might have done better at it had she not sacrificed herself to save him, which is also kind of a sign of him succeeding. It just rather cuts off the process for now.
Right. I wonder what would have happened if they had just left it out of a bubble and let it reform and see what kind of form it was in at this point. See if, it'll just hang out with Lion and eat crystal lizards.
Yeah, I can see Lion sniffing it, investigating it in that WTF way that cats and dogs do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is. I need to press my nose closer. That will do it.
It's a good way to get stung by something, or in this case, have your face melted with acid.
Yeah. Well, no, maybe Lion can cope with a bit of corrosion. He's pretty powerful, in lion terms at least.
Yeah.
I don't know if pink fur is... Yeah, I don't know if pink fur is acid proof.
Yeah. You just glow his eyes at it.
I can see it doing that. And it's sort of going...
They'd be a pair. They both have a mane.
Yeah, actually, I did notice that resemblance. I wondered if that partly triggered Stephen's affection.
Oh, yeah. When it was like sort of this giant worm, it really was harder to tell that was like big fluffy hair, but I guess it is.
Yeah, when it was in its big form, I thought it was more like a cluster of spines or something.
It had a bunch of green jewels all down its back. And still the gem in the mouth, the eyeball.
Which also looks like a Pokeball.
Yes.
I think that
definitely.
Every time this one shows up or I rewatch the episode or something, I wonder if someone did that just to distract Pokemon fans.
So there was no music this time, no songs anyway, just background stuff.
Yeah, some pretty good background stuff, but no songs.
Unless you count Stephen singing the Chips jingle.
Yeah.
You love chips. The titles of the background ones, besides the monster spelunking, was just the Monster Buddy. And I guess the one at the end was called Fight, Flight, or Love, which I thought was really interesting for a title.
A slightly bowdlerized version of what they called as 3Fs in some other field.
Yeah. Yeah. What else do you want to talk about regarding Centipedal and Bubbles and anything else before we talk about food?
Well, it's definitely both expanding my knowledge and raising more questions about what I've been calling the gem ecosystem.
Uh-huh.
And that's something I always love finding out more about.
Yeah. It'd be very interesting to find out kind of as we go along. I'm kind of curious about what some of your questions are. So it'll be fun to see them get answered and discuss them. You know, because different people wonder different things at different points. And sometimes it'll answer a question before, you know, and you can realize, oh, I could have had that question, but I never wondered that, much like Stephen.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if to what extent I've been pretty vocal in my wondering about quite what happened to any other gems except the 4 we've heard of, and if they're still out there, if there is some gem command giving our lot missions or something, or if they are now the only 3 left anywhere, or if all the rest of the gems became horrible people and this lot maintained a more noble mission. So things like that. And
Yeah.
I mean, well, I was going to say, I keep saying it seems clear to me, but I keep forgetting they actually confirmed this on screen, that there was big gem action in the past.
Some kind of battle.
Yeah, and something has shocked and scaled back gemhood. To what degree and what nature we don't know, but on the giant strawberry place to keep talking about the battles that happened in the past and things like that.
Yes. Yeah. And they definitely sidestep all details about it. Well, they're not ready to tell you.
And I wonder things like, are there loads of, say, amethysts, and we just call this one amethyst because she's the one on TV, or is there like one person per gem? So there's only ever going to be so many at a given time, because even though there's a lot, there's only so many kinds of rocks in the world. And also how and why, and if at all this relates to earth minerals, or if it's just a nickname of someone saying, oh, pale purple rock. Okay, your name's amethyst because it looks like that.
No, they have not discussed any explicit relationship between our gems and earth gems. Like, would they ever wear jewelry?
Yes. Is that like their version of wearing fur?
Right. Like if they see some human walking around with a diamond necklace, are they going to be like, who are you wearing?
Have we missed them protesting outside jewelry shops?
Of course, humans eat other animals, so...
True.
Maybe they're like, oh, I don't care. I never liked her. It's fine if she became a ring. I think I've just figured out a fan fiction to write. Just kidding. I have not ever written fan fiction, weirdly. I've drawn plenty of fan art, but no fan fiction.
Your choker owes me $5.
Or she owed me $5, so that's why we made her become a choker. Wow. We're getting a little dark over here. Wow. You have become an accessory. You know, I've got a pair of garnet earrings right here that I was wearing the other day. This is not today's merchandise, but I've got some garnet earrings that my sister gave me. And
Nice
they're really
ones.
cute.
Yeah.
And they're also my birthstone. So, you know, I can talk about wanting to, carry garnet around on my body without being weird.
Yeah, we keep coming back to this. We like our birthstone characters.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I guess we're lucky that way. So do you want to get hungry while I talk about food?
Go for it.
I bet you can guess what I made.
Chaps.
Chips. That is one of the foods that I made for today. I made 2. So it would be easiest to just buy some potato chips in the store and relabel them. So, and of course you can do that if you ever wanted to have a Steven Universe party and have that as like a favor or something. You could download the picture of it, and they have model sheets and stuff. So you could just relabel them and try to look slick. So if you don't want to make your own, that is always an option. But I decided I am an extremely extra person. So I made some potato chips from scratch. And I did also make my own packaging, which, I did what I just described and made like little aluminum foil pouches that they could be sealed in. And I noticed just from studying the design of it, it's the front of the chips package has like a smiling potato chip on it that says chips, but the back of it has a frowning potato and it says chumps.
Oh.
I don't know why. I just thought it was really funny, so I had to reproduce it. So for the potato chips themselves, you need a fryer and a slicer, paper towels, a dishcloth, and stuff like tongs or spatulas and stuff like that. And I used a cooling rack at one point. What else? And of course, oil, vinegar, and potatoes. Potatoes. Pretty important, that part.
Yeah,
oh, yes,
waiting
and
to get to that part.
Yes. Taters. So like the way I made them, one potato would make like about 3 personal size bags. So you can kind of figure out how many you want from that. And then the most important aspect of making good potato chips was to make sure they get sliced really thin. So I used, and what would you call that? I have a manual appliance that does this, kind of like a thin slicer. So you have to wash them. And I had to borrow it from my mom, honestly, because I did not own one. So you wash your potatoes, you slice them real thin, and then you can't just throw them in the fryer, though. You have to kind of massage the potato starch out of them. Like, this is way too much trouble to go to make potato chips. I swear to God, I'll never do it again. So I rinsed them like 3 times. You kind of soak them in water, and the starch comes out and then wash off. And then I soaked them in a vinegar and water solution you can do it for at least half an hour, but up to 2 hours, and it'll help them get crispy when you fry them. Oh, but you have to pat them dry really good after you take them out of the soaker. So what did I do? And then I just filled my deep fryer to the fill line with high smoke point oil. I use canola oil, and just throw a batch of them in there. They start to get crispy at like 5 minutes. They start to sort of curl up, and turn them over with a spatula. And while I was waiting for them to fry up, I made some seasonings, which I chose to use salt, pepper, and what did I do? I think it was onion powder. I learned from this that it was not a good idea to put a whole bunch of them, because what you do is you put it in a plastic bag and then put your cooled chips in there and then shake it around. You should put a smaller amount, because I put a lot thinking I would just do multiple batches, and it just ended up most of it sticking to the first batch, and I almost died of salt. So I do not recommend this. Just like mix them up in small portions and then shake. But you can make other flavors and stuff, like barbecue or something. I heard somebody say they used like ranch mix once. It's pretty cool.
I didn't know that so much went into making potato chips.
I'm sure that an automated version of this would be so much smoother, but for me it was very messy and involved. So, and when you even though the potato chips were patted dry, I still got like some splattering when I put them in there. So you have to make sure that you don't lean over it and put your eyes in front of the splattering oil. So
I've learned that lesson.
I did not get popped in the eye, but no chip is worth that. So what else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I just, after I seasoned them, I put them in the little bags and showed them off to people online, talking about how ridiculous I've become. So
well, I like the way at the start of this you said, now the easy way would be to go out and buy chips. As in this tone it says, so we're not going to do that.
Yes, pretty much. Like with a lot of my recipes, I completely recognize that not only will most people never do something this ridiculous, but neither does Steven. He is not making his own potato chips. He's buying them at the store. So there's no reason that you can't, but I chose not to make my life easy.
Yeah, well, but I like your dedication to the craft.
I just kind of feel like, why do it if I'm not going to do it, I will admit, as you observed, there has been plenty of chips in this show, and there will continue to be plenty of chips. And in any future occurrence of these chips, I'm like, I'm not doing it again. I'm just, you know how to do it now if you want to do it. So I don't have to repeat it. We can just assume that if you have become as ridiculous as me, you can do it. Otherwise, just buy chips at the store. So, and I should add one more note. I don't remember if I said this the last time I talked about oil. I probably did, but if you're not experienced with deep frying, you should never dump your oil down the sink because it will cause plumbing problems.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, usually it's just you can just pour it into an empty container and throw it out. It's just a bad idea to clog up your sink with oil. So I did mention that I had another recipe, but it is much simpler to make. Any guesses?
Mi torta?
Yes, of course. It's just a sandwich. I put it together in the same order. There didn't happen to be like a real model sheet on this, so I just kind of looked at it, eyeballed it. I decided that it was like a hoagie roll and let's see, it was ketchup, cheese, some kind of meat, but I used hickory smoked tofurkey, and there was some kind of pickle sticking out of that thing. And pretty sure I put some mayonnaise on it, but yeah, I think I did. And so I just made this lovely sandwich, and then I took it half an avocado and squished it up with a fork and just kind of threw it on there to look like slime. So that's what I did. That was my torta. And that is it. Chips and torta. It's actually a delicious sandwich, except that I would have preferred not to have ketchup on it, I think. I like avocado.
Well, as you said before, it's all about how authentic an experience you want.
Yeah, I didn't try to find something that would be acidic and painful to eat, so just wanted it to look right in the photo op. So what next? Should I tell you a couple of factoids? There's not much for this.
Fact away.
You mentioned the art looking a little strange. I believe that's because there was a new border on this one. We have the entrance of Helen Jo, who worked with Lamar Abrams to make this episode, and it was her first boarding. She draws some strange faces on these people. The eyes look a certain way when she draws them, and I'm pretty sure she was responsible for that, Pearl.
Yeah, whoever handled that, there are many animation models that are not to be seen from certain angles.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one. It's one of the primetime animation shows, but apparently various character models actually don't have a front-on version.
Mm-hmm. There's always, like, slightly to the side, the nose will be pointing one way or the other, no matter what.
Yeah, and I remember an interview where they said even when the character's head turns, it just skips over that part and they hope no one notices.
Uh-huh. I guess it's almost like with Mickey Mouse, and his ears always look a certain way, regardless of, you can always see both of them.
Yeah, and the more you think about it, the more that's just not be happening. There should be some time for his ears are properly side on or something, but it never happens in animation.
Right. Must be kind of like that. I'm pretty sure that, I don't know all the details of the history of the whole crew or anything, but I'm pretty sure I saw some design notes from the very beginning, like pilot era from the show, that were drawn by Helen Jo. So I'm pretty sure she's been on the team since the beginning, but she didn't start being a regular boarder until episode 23. So this is her entrance, and she is teamed with Lamar Abrams for a little while. If you recall me kind of rambling about Lamar, he did a couple of other episodes by himself before this. He did Onion Trade, and then he did Beach Party. Both of those he didn't have a partner at all. And Beach Party was number 18. And let's see, am I right? Yeah, I think I'm right that he didn't do another one until he showed up again with Helen on this episode. So it almost seems like they were just trying to figure out who was going to work with this guy. It's Helen. And then I just wrote down in my other window here, the episode description, which was Steven accidentally releases a monster from a gem bubble and attempts to tame its wild, violent instincts. I don't think that gives away too much.
No,
but,
yeah. And it gives you enough to investigate if you've been watching a while, because those are all things you'll have known and maybe wondered about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the title kind of suggests that somebody is going to be becoming a buddy with a monster anyway, so...
Yeah, I was expecting plural monsters to be buddies, but just being buddies with a monster.
Yeah.
It's the way of saying monsters can be buddies.
Yeah, we haven't ever seen any, feral monsters, hanging out with each other unless they were daughters of the main mother.
Yeah, this is something I briefly wondered if it was going to be a whole bunch of unbubbling and the room would just be filled with these various creatures we'd seen in past episodes.
Ooh. I think you should write an episode.
That's when if I had little figurines or something, I'd definitely set up photographs.
Yeah, that sounds great. I only have one more item on my list of things, and I think you know what it is. I have to show you merchandise.
Yeah.
Brand spanking new, mint in box.
Yeah, there isn't any little baby Centripup either.
Darn it.
So I wish that was a plushie. It's very cute.
Keyring too.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny that you said that because, I struggle sometimes to try to find a piece of merchandise that is at least somehow related. So I decided to go with the weapons theme for this one. And I have a keyring of the weapons.
Oh,
so I will hold it up to the camera for Daria to see, but our listeners can hear that I have this very nice, slick metal keychain that has all 5 of these weapons. It has a Steven shield, and it's metal. It's nice and heavy and cold. So it has a
nice
Steven
and chunky.
shield. Yeah, and it also has a Rose's sword on the end,
Aha.
which looks just like the one we saw in Lion 2. There's the Garnet Gauntlets, which is affectionately referred to by Daria as Hulk hands.
That one's sticking, I'm afraid.
Yeah. We got Pearl's beautiful spear.
Yeah.
And we've got Amethyst's whip. And it's a keychain.
That's nice. I really like that.
It is pretty cool. It's very satisfying to hold. It jingles.
Yeah, and it looks nice and solid.
Yeah, it really is. It's like sometimes you get stuff like this and they're plastic and kind of unsatisfying. But I really like this one. It was one of the earliest things that I bought from, did I get this from Cartoon Network or Hot Topic? I can't remember. But I thought it was a very interesting idea for a keychain too, because a lot of times you get these keychains that have a bunch of different charms on it, and this kind of has that vibe to it.
And even though it's slightly a tangent,
Yeah.
but I may as well mention, I always like the ornamentation going up Pearl's spear.
Yeah.
It's like it's got something wrapped around it. I've always thought that looked really good.
Yeah, it is very elegant. It's very pretty. It makes it a lot more aesthetically pleasing than just a plain old spear. It's very Pearl.
Yeah. Well, in fact, it is very her, because even though we usually cast her as the super pragmatic and dry one, she does have that little bit of flair about her.
You're 100% right. She has an elegance and a style to her, and she wants things to be, it's interesting because sometimes characters like her want everything to be boiled down to bare essentials, and they would want everything to have a purpose, but she wants things to be decorated and pretty as well.
Yeah, just in a certain way. And well, even her outfits,
Yes.
they could be functional, but there's always that little bit like the tutu she used to have, and the kind of, what am I calling those sort of bolero and bike shorts image she's got now. So there's a little bit of things to look at as well as just something that functionally covers her body.
Yes, ornamentation there, the little sash in the back.
To express herself. The sash, yes. That's what's
Yeah,
struggling
she's got
to
that
remember.
little tie in the back with a little ribbon that flutters around behind her. Yeah, she reminds me of my mom.
She reminds me of a friend of mine too. I haven't told the friend that yet. Now my friends who are listening are all wondering if I mean them.
My mom doesn't really watch the show, but she's seen it a few times and immediately singled out Pearl as her favorite. She's like, I like her. She's pretty. I like her because she's skinny and white. I'm like, okay, Mom. Yikes.
Could have phrased that better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to talk too much crap about my mom, but we did once have a conversation about Steven Universe that ended in me mostly jokingly telling her to leave my house because she told me she thought Garnet was ugly.
Oh.
She's like, why do you like the ugly one? She's got a big square head and a big butt. And I'm like, she is beautiful. Get out of my house.
You're just aesthetically impaired, Mom.
Yeah. Well, she's my type. We all have one, I guess. Some people's type is everyone.
Right.
But
My type is apparently squat little pale purple women.
well, she is definitely her own kind of extremely appealing. You know, I like that she's short. Being a very short person, I appreciate that. She adds that to the team without being a child, you know? So, in a lot of ways, I relate to Garnet, but not to the tallness.
Well, I think there's a little bit of all of them in all of us somewhere.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think Pearl is probably the one that I relate to the least, but I definitely do relate to her neatness, her organization, her need for things to be on schedule, because I'm like that.
Yeah. Well, I spent most of yesterday properly cleaning up the flat because I hadn't done so in a while. And when it was all done, sort of my inner Pearl was quite satisfied. But when I thought about having to do it again, my inner Amethyst took over and I didn't want to.
Yeah. Rebecca Sugar has said that she's kind of Pearl at work and she's Amethyst at home. That's awesome. Well, I've never been Amethyst at home, but I need to do what you did this weekend. I really need to clean up. It's starting to get a little out of hand over here, which most people probably would not come in here and see a problem, but I do, and that's what matters. I won't go into detail.
I'll just say mine regularly gets covered in fluff the same color as my cat's fur. I don't know what's happening there.
Oh, well, I don't have that excuse. I have no furry children or regular children to blame it on. It's all me. I could blame it on Cookie Cat. How about that? If there's ice cream everywhere, we have a problem.
That'd definitely be an Amethyst thing.
Oh, my goodness. 100%. She's saying, I say leave it.
Someone will eat it or it'll melt. It won't be there either way.
Yeah, and if it's still there 5 years later, she'll come by and lick it up.
Yeah, well, I always think of that scene with the fish burrito as, just as Pearl says, Gems can't die of food poisoning, Amethyst is certainly going to at least give it a try.
Yeah. Well, we can all appreciate that side of her. We all need somebody who's willing to try anything. It seems like there's always one in the friend group, too, who is just like, yes, I'll eat the disgusting thing. Yes, I'll jump off of the high place. So everybody knows who the friend is, unless they are the friend.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you don't know who it is, it's you. Put down that Vindaloo burrito.
Well, I'm ready to wrap up on this one before we talk too much about eating really old burritos.
Yeah,
I really want a burrito right now. But I don't have one.
No, I had them last night. But we'll let the listeners and viewers go and fetch or make their own burritos now. So maybe they can get a burrito and eat it while following the next episode.
Or perhaps a torta.
Or a torta. You've all heard how to make tortas and chips now, so you all got no excuse.
That's right. Yeah, they go together really well. Great. Well, thanks, everyone, for listening to us talk.
Bye now.
Until next time. Bye. You've been listening to Ivy and Daria on Not So Giant Women.
You can find episodes of the show in video form by looking up Not So Giant Women on YouTube.
Or in audio form at anchor.fm/NotSoGiantWomen or your podcatcher of choice. You can also find us on Facebook.
Audio production by Daria.
Video production and music by Ivy.
Daria can also be heard on Podsploitation, the Ozploitation podcast.
And Ivy at her Steven Universe fan blog at love-takes-work.tumblr.com.
Steven Universe was created by Rebecca Sugar and remains property of Cartoon Network.
No infringement is intended.